6 in the month of March, coming off a 3-0 win over Mike's beloved Buffalo Sabres. It's two straight wins for the Maple Brothers. 9 to play in April before the second season begins. OG's Convo, who do you think the Leafs will play, and who would you like to see them play? We can talk about it over the next series of minutes and over the next several days as we get ramped for the final stretch of 2023-2024. Mr. Augello, I haven't seen you in a while. How are you?
I'm well, Norm, and after watching a very unique Leaf victory at the KeyBank Center, nothing pisses off Buffalo fans more than the arena being invaded by 80% Leaf fans, but they have nobody to blame but themselves because I think they sold most of those tickets to them, and the Leaf Nation was out in force last night.
Happy Easter, by the way. Oak Ridge Ford is where you're going to get your new car. We had a huge month of March. Many people coming in to better their transportation situation, and I'd like to help you, OG's Convo, at Norman Oak Ridge Ford on Instagram. April is going to be big for Ford as well. I can also help you on a pre-owned vehicle. I am your guy for Leafs content. Let me be your guy for your next vehicle. So 3-0, Ilya Samsonov right between the pipes, and Austin Matthews, another 60-goal campaign, scoring his 60th of the season with many games to go. You never know, maybe 65's in the cards, but that's 2 60-goal runs over the last 3 years, Mr. A. On top of that, you have William Nylander scoring his 40th last week too. So a lot of personal accolades being racked up by these Maple Leafs, which is a really, really nice thing to see. In terms of how the team comes together when push comes to shove, we shall find out. And, you know, that's the thing about the Maple Leafs, 8-6 in the last month. So things to be excited about, but clearly things that could be a lot better. It sort of typifies the Leaf season in a nutshell.
Well, I mean, first with Matthews, it's obviously an accomplishment. It's never happened in Leaf history. I mean, he's the leading goal scorer now ×2, and he'll eclipse that at some point over the last games of the season. So he set a mark twice in the last 3 years. And as somebody was pointing out in the media room after the game last night, he's the first American-born player to score 60 goals more than once. I guess Brett Hull. I had said Brett Hull, but Brett Hull was I guess he was born in Canada, but or was a Canadian. So that that was the exception to that little thing. But it's great. It's a great individual accomplishment. But I think most Maple Leaf fans are concentrating on the fact of team accolades, and that's where the individual things and what this team does in the postseason. I mean, like the last few years, Norm, the season starts in the middle of April. Nobody, the only important thing about October to April is getting into the dance. Mm-hmm. It's then what you do in the dance. And that's, we'll talk about it later in terms of who they face.
Yeah.
But, right now, I mean, it's tough to really judge this team based on what has gone on in March because simply you have new players coming in after the trade deadline. You've had a bunch of injuries, and I think also what they're doing is they're not going to say load management. They're not sitting these guys on purpose, but I also think that if they have minor injuries, they're like, we need these guys at 100%,
right,
or as close to 100% going into the playoffs. So let's give them an extra week. Let's give them an extra 2 or 3 games off. We've got the extra bodies. We can play Simone Benoit. We can play Connor Timmins, who'd been out with mono for almost 2 months. We've got that luxury, so let's do it. And there's been a corresponding drop in play, and the power play hasn't been as good, but that's the reason why. So, I mean, is this the way this team is playing in March? Is this the way the team really is going to play in April or play when it counts? Maybe not, but I don't know what they're going to be when it does count.
OG's Convo, thanks for being here. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. What can we glean from these games in terms of the expectation for success over the next 9 and into the playoffs, Mike? When they lose we want more. When they win, we still want more, but they got a victory. With 9 games to go, trying to determine where this team sits, the question I have for you is, how much emphasis do the Leafs put on just head down, winning everything they can when, at the end of the day, all 4 of the Leafs' potential playoff opponents will most likely be the favorite to win that series, Mike?
Well, I mean, Tampa has not made it a cakewalk in terms of they're locked in the 3rd place. I mean, they're more than likely not catching Florida and Boston. Although they're not within, I think they're within 4 points of 4 points of the Panthers, and they have 2 more games against them. 6 points. It's 6 points, but they have a game in hand and they have 2 more games against them. But really, I mean, you're gonna go balls out to get home ice advantage, and then they win. I don't think home ice advantage as we've seen, like in the Tampa series a few years ago. And whether it's really determinative when it comes to the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to make sure they bring everybody back at less than 100% for the hope of winning home ice advantage. But they're only, they're only 4 points ahead of Tampa, same amount of games. And I believe they play Tampa at least one more time before the end of the season. So that, 3rd place as opposed to the first wild card, I mean, you're going to face one of 4 teams in the playoffs right now. It's going to be Carolina, the Rangers, if you fall into the first wild card, or it's going to be Boston or Florida. I have my own personal opinion on this. I think the only team that they'll be, as you said, they won't be favored against all 4. I personally believe there's only one of the 4 that they can beat, and that's Boston. And that's not saying Boston's going to be a cakewalk, because Boston, there's a whole set of problems when it comes to playing Boston.
Wow. Sorry, Mike, to interrupt, but if Boston is the team that you believe the Leafs have the best chance against,
right,
when every time the Leafs play Boston, we're so disappointed and think that they're outclassed on most occasions, holy shit, this is going to be a very tough task doing anything of substance when the Stanley Cup playoffs begin for the Maple Leafs. Wow.
And I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago. I see, the thing is, and I didn't factor in Carolina or the Rangers because I didn't think that there was a chance the Leafs could fall into the first wild card, but I have to factor them into this equation.
Right.
Carolina, the Rangers, and Florida are all better than the Leafs in all 4 aspects: offense, defense, goaltending, and intangibles. They win every battle there. Now, that's not to say the Leafs can't win, but I just don't see them. It would be, they'd have a puncher's chance, but I don't see it with Boston. Their advantage, they're better defensively. The goaltending, I think, is slightly better. I think the Leafs are better offensively. But where the Bruins' main advantage is psychological, it's intangibles. It's the Marchand getting under your skin. It's now Patrick Maroon, all that stuff. If you can overcome that, if it's pure talent, the Leafs can win that series. Sure. But in all the other ones, I think they're dramatic underdogs to all 3 of those teams.
OG's converts, what say you? Which team would you like to see the Leafs line up against when the Stanley Cup playoffs begin here in the next couple of weeks? Mike, we've seen teams favored fall apart and teams that none of us believe to have any opportunity or chance to do anything successful in the second season go on lengthy runs, right, Mike? So the thing about the Maple Leafs is they're not appreciably worse than any of the competition that they're set to face. It's just, as you say, the Carolinas, the New Yorks, the Floridas, even the Bostons are just better in the aspects that really require tightening up to make things happen. And the Leafs just don't encompass that, top to bottom type of mosaic that you would want and you require to do well when it matters the most. So again, OG's converts, there's a there's a belief that deep down the Leafs can pull it off. But based on what we know at this point, I mean, you can be optimistic, but you can't be, you can't lose your sense of understanding of the moment and where the Leafs are at right now, Mike. It's really going to come down to, personnel stepping up, overcoming their own personal, I guess, demons when it comes to producing in the playoffs, and maybe the rise of players we aren't really thinking may have an impact in the playoffs. Mike, let's talk a little bit about Mitch Marner. Has not been around for a run of games. High ankle sprain. The Leafs put him on long-term injury, and I mean, obviously that was for roster moves. But as much as the Matthews and the Nylanders are doing well personally and racking up their stats and stuff like that, when you look at the power play, the absence of Marner, and of course Riley too, makes you feel like this team needs to, come together in a pretty substantial way here over the next few weeks in order to get in line and ready for a playoff run. And that would include figuring out how to score goals with the man advantage and, of course, defend when you're down a man. If the Leafs don't have their special teams humming, they really don't have any sort of chance, Mike. So talk a little bit about Mitch Marner, how you think they can get these special teams in line in time, and maybe throw out a little bit about Simon Benoit and his 3-year contract.
Okay, Marner first. He's been out over 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody who saw that game against Boston, where he sort of did an uncomfortable sort of speed wobble and then limped to the bench and came back for a while. Pretty much it's been described in the media as a high ankle sprain. And obviously those are, we've seen Joseph Woll be out 3 months with that, and Liljegren be out for 5 weeks with that, and then not really be himself for about, I'd say, another month after that until he started playing better. So for a player as important as Mitch Marner to be out that long, I'm sure he didn't want to be out that long, but they're looking at the playoffs. Now, but the thing is, and I mean, it was just really odd. This press availability they had, I believe it was on Thursday, where he got really catty and cagey with the media regarding the seriousness of the injury, or the origin of the injury, or what the injury was. And it's like he was in playoff mode, but he was also sort of like, you guys are going to say what you're going to say type of stuff. And it's like, no, like, why are you doing this? Because honestly, this is part of the origin of why there is some Marner hate, because he it's like, Nylander just seems like happy-go-lucky and like he doesn't give a crap about anything. He doesn't care about what people say about him. He is what he is. He's going to wear his hat with the straight brim, and he's going to go out and just do what he does.
Right.
Whereas Marner seems to be on edge constantly.
Yeah, what's with the chip on his shoulder?
I don't know. And I think he does himself a disservice, because I think, as I've said, and I've clearly made my opinion on this, I think he's the better of the two players. But, right now, Nylander is going to be the first Leafs winger to score 100 points. And he's got 40 goals, something that Marner has never done.
Right.
And I don't know if that's part of it. I don't know if it's the contractual situation that he's going into the summer with 1 year left in his deal. And I'm sure, based on the fact that he's from the Toronto area, that he's being told by his friends that they're going to trade you if they don't win like all this stuff. I'm sure he hears it.
Right.
So I don't think he does himself any favors when it comes to this situation. And maybe he doesn't care, but I think it clearly shows that he does, and that it bothers him. And how can he quiet people? Show up in the playoffs. If you show up
11, Marner consumes the media the most. Again, he's most likely frustrated with the fact that he's not out there helping his team, because the Leafs do need Mitch Marner running things and running that offense and playing special teams and being out there late in games. They've certainly missed him. But there's only so much you can do if you're injured. And maybe there might be, Mike, this want for him to come back personally, and the team's wanting to hold him out because, hey, fuck your personal accolades, screw your stats that you probably want to pile up, and who wouldn't? Obviously, going into contract year soon, wanting to get every goal, every assist he possibly can. But at the end of the day, his health is number one, and the benefit of the team is right there, with that need to be healthy and prepared for the second season. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and if he's taking out some of his frustration on the media, and it's unwarranted, it's unfair, it's not a good look for Marner. At the end of the day, the Leafs need this guy. They need this guy. So how do you think he's incorporated back into the lineup with the 9 games to play and the playoffs, that shoreline getting into clearer view every day?
Well, I mean, you could argue he's the most important player to the Leafs going into the playoffs, and not the best player and not the most important player, but not the most valuable player, but the most important player, because he plays power play and because he's a playmaker and because he's on the top penalty kill and he plays 23, 24 minutes a night.
Right.
You need that guy 100% healthy. You're going to use him in all 3 aspects, right, even strength, power play, penalty kill.
Right.
So personal accolades, nobody cares, Mitch. But what people care about is this team winning in the playoffs. Now, you mentioned the power play. Obviously Marner coming back and being plugged in on the power play is going to help it. You've got the 2 snipers in Nylander and Matthews on the half boards. You got Tavares in front of the net. Marner is going to basically be the hinge along with Riley. I mean, it's struggled for a while, but I think that it will kick into gear, or at least the Leaf fans and the Leafs management are hoping that it does going into the playoffs. So the absences, I think, have been the thing that has hurt them the most on the power play. The penalty kill, I think, is abysmal without Marner and without Kali Yarncroke. I mean, I know Keefe tried to put a positive spin on it yesterday, saying they've been playing better lately. Well, they killed all 5 of Buffalo's power plays, but Buffalo is one of the worst power plays in the league. So It's not a major accomplishment. Show me that you can kill off the Bruins power play or the Panthers power play or Carolina or the Rangers in the first round.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
Right. Maybe it's partially confidence, and that helps. So, and just going back to Samsonov for a second, Buffalo was the scene of the worst part of his broken psyche back in December. He gave up 5 goals and he got yanked. And when asked last night about, what had happened there, whether it felt good to have a shutout in the place where he had his worst moment, and he was like 9 goals. He was basically like, oh, F that shit. So he doesn't care. And that's the right attitude to have. Right. But I mean, right now, even though he has played better since the All-Star break, even though Joseph Wall's come back and, I think he's rounding into form, really the only team of the 4 that you could say they have a goaltending advantage over is and not even, I think they're even with Boston and even with Carolina. Swayman is a good young goaltender, and Freddie Anderson, we know his issues, but they could go with Kochetkov in the playoffs. Shesterkin is one of the best goalies in the league,
right? And
so is Bobrovsky. So they're at a distinct disadvantage. Now, goaltending can show up and in unusual places, and they could have they could perform really well. But going into the playoffs, they're at a distinct disadvantage in a number of areas.
Like the content, subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much, guys, for all of your support. We've been away for about 2 weeks. Life happens, but this content happens. And as we get closer to the playoffs, we'll ramp it up a little bit more, and then a lot more, once the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. And really, in terms of the longevity of this podcast for 23-24, that's dependent upon your Maple Leafs and how deep they end up going in the playoffs. So, 1 round, 2 round, 3 rounds, that's more Leafs Convo for you. Couple of moves, Brad Treliving extending Simon Benoit, average annual value of $1.3 million through 26-27. Add to that the Bobby McMann signing. Real smart financial moves with a couple of guys who've earned this opportunity, earned this kind of money, and OGs and converts are hoping will continue to earn more and more in terms of their place on the lineup, the respect that they would like to garner, and their ability to become better NHLers. So the money's there, the opportunity is there. And it's nice to see these young cats get into the lineup, get into the mix, and make a difference.
Yeah, starting with McMann. I mean, this was the fear. He had started scoring regularly, and he was a UFA, 27 years old, coming off a 20-plus goal season in the AHL. Had some injury issues, and cleared waivers. People don't remember. But both McMann and Simone Benoit cleared waivers early in the year. I mean, had they tried to send them down later in the year after they had played better, they probably would have gotten claimed. So the Leafs got lucky in that respect. It was, people were starting to fear that, okay, this is going to be like Michael Bunting. All of a sudden, he has a good year. He's a UFA. He's 27 years old. He's big. It's going to cost him a ridiculous amount of money to get this guy signed when we don't really know whether he's proven or not. And that's the I think the quality of this deal. They give him a decent amount for 2 years. So now he would turn UFA at 29. He's a big player. He plays with that size, and he has shown an ability to score. He's shown an ability to play with talent. He's played with Tavares and Nylander, and he's been sort of effective. There's an outside chance he could score 20 goals. And had he scored 20 goals, he was probably gone. There's no way that they'd be able to afford to re-sign him. But they get him at a very economical rate for 2 years. And that is good work by Brad Treliving. The Benoit deal, I mean, go back to October. I'm like, Simone Benoit, this guy is, he's a plug. He's crap. He's nothing. Yeah, and that's what I said. And that was the evidence. I mean, it seemed to be everybody agreed to that. The analytics crowd didn't like him, and the eye test people didn't like him as well. But he has played pretty well. He has played better even when it elevated in the lineup, playing with Jake McCabe on a second pairing for a good stretch. Right. I mean, here's the point. Is he a top 4 defenseman? No. They're not paying him as a top 4 defenseman. They're paying him as a bottom pairing guy. And based on what happens in the summer, I mean, more than likely, Mark Giordano is not going to be back. This is probably his last year. He's probably going to retire. Right. TJ Brody, the only way he comes back is at significantly less than $5 million. I think they could re-sign one of Lyubushkin or Edmondson, but not both of them.
Right.
So you need, in terms of their depth in the organization, Topi Niemela may be another year away, and they don't have a lot of depth on defense. So signing Benoit as a 6'7" to go along with Connor Timmins, right, at less than $1.5 million for both of them is good work. And you're also going to have to repay. You're also going to have to pay Timothy Liljegren on a new deal. So to get somebody who can fit into your bottom pairing at $1.3 million for a good term is good work by Brad Treliving.
So just over $4 million for Simon Benoit for the next 3 years. Nice contract extension for him. Nice sign up for Brad Treliving and his crew. McMann, 2 years, $2.7 million. These are the accessories that you'd hang onto the real contents of the team that you'd expect to make it tick. Chris Daniels, I've not seen him in the chat for a while. Thanks for being here, Mr. Chris. The plan in the offseason seems to be spend pretty much all the money on a top 4 D-man and a pretty good center to play with Nylander. I mean, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, but since McMann and Benoit will be here for the next several seasons and will be good support players for the core, I mean, more support you'd expect to be coming, but where do they find the money to do that? Well, maybe freeing up the ability for Mitch Marner to find another place to play.
I know that everybody is anxious to throw dirt on John Tavares, but honestly, he's going to score. He's going to score a significant amount of points this year. He's not over the hill. He's slowing down. There's no doubt about that. I don't think that they're going to spend significant assets to go out and find a center for William Nylander. I think the center for William Nylander next year is John Tavares. Now, 2 years, 3 years down the road, where Tavares probably has to move to the wing, but I think is probably still a Leaf, then that concern of getting your second line center is back again. So, but I don't think that that's a next year concern. I think that's a 2 years down the road concern. And that's also a concern, or also something that has to be addressed with what they do with Marner in terms of a new contract. If they trade Marner, which again, I don't think is a likelihood, because Marner's got a no move clause, and I can't see him waiving the no move clause to go someplace else just because the Leafs want to trade him. It's either they're going to extend him or he's going to walk away as a UFA after next season, because you can just tell them, go F yourself. Where is the benefit to him to waive the no move clause?
And if he's got an animosity towards someone in the organization, the fan base at large, the media, he seems vindictive enough to pull off that kind of move, or at least work his way to a place where he's got so much leverage it makes everybody else feel like they just can't make they have no maneuverability in any sort of circumstance to have a positive outcome. So again, we're speculating. Let's hope it doesn't get to that. But Mike, at the end of the day, the Leafs have 9 games to go for this season, and I'm hoping that there is a composure to the group that is necessary to really get its collective head screwed on straight for success to come, because we may not feel that they are up to snuff when it comes to their potential competition here in the Stanley Cup playoffs, but it's not like they're light years behind whomever they play. They still have an opportunity to win. It really, really depends on how assertive they are when the puck drops, and the potential of that opponent to, be on its heels to start and never gain any kind of momentum. The Leafs have been through this song and dance so many times that you never know. Oh, geez, Conference. It could be the year. We're going to wrap up here in a couple of seconds. Theo99. The Leafs have 0 chance of winning the Cup again this season. I doubt they even advance to this round 2, because they will likely play Boston or Florida. Theo, I don't know if you just joined us, but Mike thinks of the 4 potential opponents the Leafs could face here in the next couple of weeks in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, they have the best chance to come out successfully against Boston.
Yeah, I mean, for the reasons that I described, I not to say that they're not going to be favored against any one of them, but Boston. Don Sweeney did not add a center at the trade deadline. So your number 1 center is Pavel Zacha, and your number 2 center is Charlie Coyle. That's not bad, but it's not as good as Toronto. And Toronto has that matchup advantage. Toronto is a better offensive team than Boston. Now, whether they can produce, right, like with Boston nipping at their heels constantly, with them aggravating them. And, remember, Boston has won 7 consecutive regular season games against the Leafs. So clearly they get under their skin, and they added Patrick Maroon, another irritant, at the trade deadline. So that is going to be the MO of the Bruins. We're going to snipe. We're going to piss you off. We're going to run you. We're going to do what we do best. And you're going to have to prove to us that you can beat us at our game. Now, one encouraging thing about that game last night in Buffalo is that I think you can say this is a rivalry now, because one of my complaints for years on end is that the Leafs would come into Buffalo and they would lay down in the Sabre. It was the Sabres Stanley Cup final, because they haven't made the playoffs in 13 years, and they'd work themselves up into a lather, and they'd beat the Leafs, and they'd feel good about themselves for a day or two until they realize that they're the Sabres. But last night, the Leafs play. Now the Sabres pretty much are playing out the string. They're not going to make the playoffs again. But the Leafs came in, they scored the first goal, they got good goaltending, and at the end of the game, Alex Tuch hit TJ Brody into the boards, and you had a bunch of skill guys out there, and Bertuzzi went at it, and Giordano went at it, and Matthews and Dahlin. It was like nobody dropped their gloves and fought because none of these guys are fighters. But there was, it was a long scrum, and the Leafs and the Sabres don't like each other.
Right.
The Sabres don't like the fact that their building gets invaded twice a year. And it's now a rivalry where I think there's not a lot of love between the two teams.
Vepsis, best thing they can do in these playoffs is to start showing up and changing the narrative, where they always come out small in clutch moments. If they lose because of depth, fine, the GM will fix it later. So, Mike, as we get into April, 9 games to go, 2 against Florida, 2 against New Jersey. You have the Habs in there. You also have the Tampa Bay Lightning in there for a pair. Pittsburgh, Kyle Dubas, and of course Detroit. How do the Leafs start changing the narrative now, or does it matter if they begin to show a pulse to the rest of the NHL that, hey, they're capable and ready to go? Do they need to begin changing the narrative now before the start of the playoffs, or is it all meaningless until the puck drops on the first round? Last word to you.
I think it's all meaningless, but they, in a sense, they control their fate because they play Tampa twice. They play Florida twice. And if Tampa wins both those games, they could fall into the first wild card. And if they lose both to Florida, then they would play Boston. You see what I'm saying? They really can. And if they beat Florida, they're playing the Panthers. And if they beat Tampa Bay, then they're playing either the Panthers or the Bruins. So
do they play to win? And
yes, they can't
be what they are.
They can't see. Okay, I'm sure management looks at the standings, and fans do, and media does, and says they have a better chance against this team. The players can't think that way. And the coach can't think that way. If you tell your players to dog it, then that you've given up half the battle. So they cannot do that. But I look at it as an objective sort of third party looking at it. It's like I think they have the best chance of beating the Bruins. The Bruins are 2 points ahead of Florida right now. Florida and Boston play each other one more time. Right. The random element here is how Toronto does against Florida. And if they beat Florida twice, then they're going to play the Panthers in the playoffs. And if they
would you consider those to be statement games to come? Like whether they play Florida in the first round, second round, whatever. Just a statement to say, look, we remember you guys. You went all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. You've had a great season.
Yeah.
Ours still leaves more to be desired, but we haven't been that bad. Let's fucking go. We're going to show you what we're made of.
I guess you could say it's a statement series or a statement game because you lost to that team in the playoffs last year. You got run over by them and you didn't produce against them. I mean, you could say, okay, Leafs, show us where you're different and show us how you've changed.
Yeah.
But Florida has something to say about it too. And then they have Tkachuk and Reinhart and the defense that they have and Bobrovsky. I don't know how it comes out any different. It's possible it does. Florida has not played well down the stretch, and maybe that continues. I don't know. All I know is that I look at that matchup, and I don't like it from the Leafs' perspective.
What I do like about where we are right now and the uncertainty of who the Leafs will play in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs is the uncertainty. We don't know. Last year at this time, we were prepping for one team and one team only, right? And the result was positive, and the successful outcome made us excited for more because we knew that the Leafs had to finally get past the Tampa Bay Lightning to do anything of substance. They did, and then they fell flat against Florida. This year, we may not know who they're going to face in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs until the last couple of days or even the last day. That's exciting in and of itself, considering whomever they line up against the Leafs will not be the favorites, instead the underdogs. But there's nothing wrong with playing as the underdog, Mike, because, the expectations are lessened, even though as Leaf fans, the expectations are always prevailing. But, there's an exciting element to that. Let's just hope Mitch Marner gets back okay. Morgan Riley, get the power play rocking and rolling. This team begins to build a momentum as it prepares for liftoff into a playoff where there's going to be a lot of uncertainty, but uncertainty brings a lot of excitement, hope, and positivity. Mike, anything else you wanted to chip in before we, just shut the show down, send it off to the masses and wait for more people to consume it?
No. Leafs have 5 home games and 4 road games to go in the season. And I'm sure if they could click their fingers together, they would wish it was April 20th right now.
Yeah, well, you know what? There are more games to play. And I can tell you, I don't think the NHL has an appetite to shorten the regular season schedule. They may even try to lengthen it at some point to make more money. But the 82 games that this team has to go through to prepare itself for the playoffs, in my opinion, is just enough. And I'm excited to see what else is to come. OG's Commerce, like the content, subscribe to the channel. Oak Ridge Ford is where you're going to get your next vehicle. I work there. I'm a sales consultant at the dealership in London, Ontario. If you have any questions about a buying experience that you've had or intend to have, I am your guy at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. You can find Mike's latest work at hockeybuzz.com. Mike, we missed the last 2 weeks, so let's see if we can make up for it over the next several weeks to come. Lots of content, maybe a midweek showing of the Sunday Spectaculars will be around depending on when the Leafs play. And with any luck, we'll be going months and months into the next several opportunities with the Leafs and what they're trying to accomplish. And that's good for us because you and I can connect live and the OGs and converts can join us. All right. Thank you very much for being here. Like the content, subscribe to the channel. The Leafs Convo is out.